Hello everybody and welcome back to Modern Romance. Today I'm actually in the middle of a huge protest that's happening here in Colombia. It is what is considered a peasants' protest, and I'm not 100% sure what it's all about. I'm not really sure of the politics, so I'm not really trying to take a side. However, I do just want to point out that there's a lot of chanting and honking of horns and things of that going on in the street, which might interrupt the video, so I just kind of want to put that out there. I'm also going to be recording a few videos for the next coming weeks now because I am trying to focus on a course that is going to be a paid course that I'm going to give to everyone out there that really kind of cements a lot of my ideas. So I'm trying to get that done as professionally as possible, and when I actually revamp the channel up to support that content coming out, which should be in about a month to a month and a half from now, because I'm really trying to not only make sure that the writing for that content is good, but also that it is as professionally produced as humanly possible. Because I think one of the biggest problems is whenever you're looking to buy a course, the advertising looks really pristine, and then you buy the course and it's a dude on his cell phone talking into camera in the most like droning possible of ways. And I think statistically speaking, something like 70 to 80% of people who buy courses don't finish them. So that's a really big deal for me because, I don't know, like I've already got your money if you bought the course. However, as a idea, I want you to have enjoyed it. Like, I feel like the interaction, part of that where, if you get something out of it, you're way more likely to tell your friend, hey, this really worked for me, you should try it too, it works, than you are if you give me your money and, put it on for 10 minutes and you're like, I barely could stay awake through the first episode and there's how many more? Oh God. And then it just kind of sits there in your queue and, so on, so forth, that sort of thing. So I'm really trying to work on that, but I also realize I've been neglecting the channel for a long time. And the reason why is because it takes a lot of time and effort to do that. So what I wanted to do is just kind of take a day and make a ton of content. However, of course, the week that I decide to sit down and make a bunch of content, there is a protest that is going on that is going to disrupt everything. So if you hear it, that is why, that is what's going on with the channel, so on, so forth. Let's get at it. So today what we're going to be talking about is Johnny Depp and the Johnny Depp trial and what that means in terms of relationships. So I think that before we get into the obvious abuse of Amber Heard, the possible abuse of Johnny Depp, what that means in terms of the court trial and court trials for people in general, as well as what that really means for relationships, I think it's important to talk about gender and what the ideal is. So I feel like, a lot of men's rights activists look at the Johnny Depp trial and what they see and what they think is here is someone who has obviously been abused. And not only was he abused within the relationship, first things first, he was never going to come out and make that public. Like, he was never going to go after Amber Heard to try and ruin her life the way that she did him. There would have been zero support for him to say that, she threw a bottle at him and almost cut his finger off, that she was beating him, that she shit in his bed, which is still mildly humorous, I guess. I mean, I don't know, it's becoming a meme in and of itself that she shit in his bed. But, the grander scale here is that men have absolutely nowhere to go in a relationship if it goes to that place. There is zero support from people at large. No one looks at these men and thinks, can we get them into a shelter? Can we get them into this? Can we get them into that? So that's a problem. The fact that his career was ruined at her making allegations without any corroborating evidence, and the idea that when it came out that she was actually abusive and there's proof of it, that there are zero repercussions for her career. And I think that even more so, people look at the trial itself and think, I still, even with this lawsuit and even with public opinion of her being awful, I really just don't think that he will get anything from this. He might get the win in terms of getting his reputation back somewhat, but I also think that to a lot of people still, he will always be a wife beater. And it doesn't matter that it's true, it doesn't matter that it's not true. What matters is there's a certain number of people that once that idea gets in their head, it's really hard for that to be shaken. Like, even on Twitter today, there are a ton of people that basically say he deserved it for all of his abusive behavior, meaning the allegations that Amber Heard has laid at him, even though there's no proof of that. So it's kind of a weird thing when you have two people alleging abuse on each other and one has proof and one doesn't. And I think that, regardless of where the truth lies in this particular case, because it is so high profile of a men's rights case, what you end up with is, well, if it was reversed, where the woman had evidence that she was abused in the way that Johnny Depp was. However, if the man was also making accusations and didn't have proof, you get an eye roll, I think, from most feminists and most people who are women's rights activists being like, oh yeah, sure, you can say that. And I think it also goes to the idea that one of the reasons why the idea of a man abusing a woman is so detrimental is that men are stronger. Like, physically, our bodies just maintain muscle mass and proteins differently than what women's do. Our hormones are different. And regardless if you're trans or you want to get into the male and female brain, the male body is just physiologically always going to be different and stronger. So it's a little bit of a nuclear option. If a man hits a woman, not only is he creating, the same kind of damage that he would do to another man, however, she doesn't have the ability to defend herself. There is no fairness there. What you have is a bully, essentially. And you have a situation where a woman is totally vulnerable and totally in a place where she just has to take it. Like, there's really not a lot of repercussions for the woman to defend herself, with the lone exception of firearms. So you also have this idea that women, just because a man could defend himself and could win in that fight, it is impossible for him to do so. So if you're in a relationship and you're a man and a woman hits you, just because you could win in a bout of fisticuffs, you actually don't have that option. You are unable to hit her without it becoming a legal matter where she can go to the cops. And there's absolutely no argument where, it can be like, well, she was beating me, so I hit her to end the circumstance. Like, what is expected of men in these situations is this sort of de-escalation where you're expected to subdue her without hurting her and not leaving marks, because if there are any marks, it's obviously your fault, even though you may have had nothing to do with the altercation. And this, it becomes a level of absurdity. Like, there is one instance where she was hitting him. He tried to physically restrain her, and there was some form of headbutt, like, he's holding her, and I'm assuming, I actually don't know what their sizes are, but typically women are smaller, so shorter, and, the heads clash as he's trying to kind of restrain her from hurting him, and gives her a little shiner, a little bruise under her eye, which I think is completely justified if you're looking at that situation. But the bigger scale here is that why are people letting things get to that point? Like, there are red flags, and I cover red flags not only in my paid course that I definitely want people to take, even though it's not out yet. I will put a link when it comes out to all my previous videos. However, the more important thing is it's in a lot of my other YouTubes here. I have red flags and I talk about things to the moment that you see them, the moment that you see these problems, you should be out of there. Like the idea that, you know, you've let things escalate to the point where you're having to subdue someone who's trying to beat you and worrying about their, you know, how it's going to look. You should definitely be hyper aware of that before it gets to that point. Like there are going to be signs that are problems. And here's the other problem that I think that people don't completely realize is that, you know, it goes back to the hot versus crazy scale. You know, like the women who are more likely to be the Amber Heard, like she seems like she's probably a lot of fun, right? Like she seems like she's one of those girls that's good in bed and who does all the things that people, that men want, you know, all the dirty talk, all the kink, all the sex, all the fun stuff. But it does, there's no off switch to it. Like her life is that sort of chaos. So, you know, my speculation there would be that she is someone who just can't turn it off. However, to be fair to Amber Heard, there was a ton of substance abuse from Johhny. So I'm not saying that because he was an alcoholic or a drunk or even a drug addict, which, you know, he's claiming was not the case, though he did have to get off and got clean from drugs. No one really gets off of drugs that's enjoying it and having a good time just for fun. Like, there are some reasons and repercussions and problems there. So while I don't necessarily appreciate what Amber Heard's attorneys were doing, trying to, you know, make all these accusations and assumptions that you know, Johhny Depp was always drunk, I will say that even if, and I don't know that it's true, but even if Depp had never been violent, had never gotten drunk and had issues with aggression towards her or anyone else, which, you know, not only her, but all of his exes have said that he's not violent even when he was drunk, which, you know, I'm not a violent drunk either. You know, like, I'm not a huge drunk, but I'm just saying that when I do drink, like, I'm not somebody who has to worry about flying off the handle. Like, all I want to do is cuddle. Like, that's it. Like, I want to cuddle and have nice things said to me and, you know, maybe watch horror movies or something. And the most violent I ever get when drinking is yelling at a television because I love MMA. So I'll be like, yeah, break his leg or something. You know, and you shout things that you would never say in person. Like, that's the extent of my catharsis when drinking. But so, like, you know, that kind of seems to be the consensus with Johhny Depp. So I don't necessarily think that she's the exception, though. If she was saying things that were very hurtful, you know, if you have somebody who's very toxic, sometimes they can bring the toxicity out of you. And I think it's even more the case when you have something that resembles a connection. Like, there's a reason why they got married. So maybe the sex is amazing and she made him feel really good about himself. And then other times she's saying things to kind of tear down this thing that she's built up. So one minute she's saying something that makes you feel really good about yourself, and the next she's saying something that completely just cuts you to the bone and makes you destroy it. It's completely possible that he did some of the things that she is accusing. Like, it's impossible to prove a negative when you weren't there all the time, but there are assumptions that can be made, and I would, you know, if I was a betting man, that, you know, if there was some way to check that, which there is not, that you could, you know, check to see if he ever was abusive towards her, he probably was not. However, you know, there's no way to confirm that completely. However, there's no denying that she was abusive. So back to my point here is that if Depp is on all of these narcotics and drugs and alcohol and what have you, and he's constantly drunk, it's not a fun thing to babysit. Like, if you've ever had a friend that was an alcoholic, like I have a friend, and I'm not going to say his name here, but he probably knows who I'm talking about. And, you know, he's kind of cleaned up a bunch, but it used to be every time that we would hang out with him, me and my ex, he would kind of be a wreck. And, like, it would be fun, like he would usually, like, fly in for, like, a weekend or a long weekend or something like that, and, like, day one it's fun, but, like, he never stops drinking. Like, you know, like, every single day, every single moment they were drinking. And it's like, that was fun for one night, but now I want to get up early and like be a person and do things, and this person is incapable because of all of the drugs and alcohol, and they weren't so much on drugs, but you get the point. So that I can't imagine living with someone every single day where you're taking care of things, you're taking care of, you know, food and cleaning and all of these things, and you just have somebody who is being, you know, I think one of the things that doesn't get brought up enough in this is that, you know, Johnny Depp was like getting so drunk he was barfing in their bed while they were sleeping in it together and all these sorts of things. These are not fun things. I'm not saying that it justifies what Amber has, you know, what we know that Amber did. But I also would say that in the same sense that Johnny's past has not revealed similar behaviors, I would also say that no one else is coming forward to talk about Amber. And maybe it's a bro thing that like guys don't want to come out as the victim. But from the little bit that I could get from Elon Musk and his quotes towards Amber Heard, is that he was pretty hurt that things broke up when they did with her, that he really loved her, that it seemed like a really good relationship for him at the time, and that she broke things off with him because they were both very busy, and he was really hurt by that. Like, he wanted things to continue. So, you know, I don't want to speculate too much on that, because it's very possible that he wanted things to continue. Like, just because like she was being abusive towards him doesn't mean that he was like, I don't want a relationship with her anymore. That like, psychologically speaking, like he could have been miserable and just addicted to the misery, and then she left and he was sad. That's totally possible, and like I said, that's total speculation. I'm not saying that is what happened, but I'm saying that you can't rule it out, even though it's counterintuitive, if that makes sense. So, you know, it is possible that what you have is two people that are totally toxic together. And again, if what you're wanting is happiness in your life, trying to point fingers to figure out who's to blame in a relationship isn't good. Like, you know, like, who's more to blame? Like, it's a race to the bottom. That's all that is. Like, if you're like, well, you barfed in the bed, oh, well, you shit in the bed, and oh, well, you hit me, well, you hit me too. I mean, like, no one's happy here. You might as well leave. And if you want for that not to be a case, like, you have, like, the beginnings of relationships are so important. Like, this idea that you're going to fix somebody, that you're going to see, like, find somebody who has a ton of problems and be like, I see the diamond in the rough there, I can fix that, doesn't happen. Absolutely 100% doesn't happen. So I think that a large part of that has to do with setting and understanding your own deal breakers and understanding what personality types and behaviors are being indicated by somebody's actions. So I think that one of the biggest problems with that is that people don't understand what's indicative of other things. Like, I think that, you know, kind of similarly to what I was just saying about Elon Musk, that just because he's sad someone's leaving is not indicative that it was a good relationship. It's indicative that he felt some sort of, I don't know, what's the right word I'm looking here, like, dependency on her. So you can feel dependency on someone who's being abusive. Like, there's all, like, I guarantee you, like, right now, you know, there's women who are being abused and they're still happy in the relationship. They don't recognize that it's abuse. They're gaslit and controlled. And if the man who's abusing them were to leave, those women would be sad he left. That's a reality, right? You know, they might feel stupid in retrospect, and they might not want to out themselves because, you know, the relationship is ostensibly over. However, you really can't win that argument when the other person left. So I think that's a very real thing. But back to my point, is like there are things that we think are true and that we assume are true in a large scale that just simply aren't. And I think that's one of them. So I think when you understand personality traits and what red flags are, you really need to break that down. So I think largely in scale, both those people made each other miserable. From a legal standpoint, I think that, I think Johhny's going to win. I hope he wins. I think that it's important for the larger scale of what's acceptable. But I also think that this notion that women in the culture, this isn't like a male-female thing, this is females in a culture. Like there has been this narrative to compensate for women being hurt or women being the victim. And it's like, oh, well, women are always right. And the reality is that men are abused more in relationships by far than women. And that is just based upon reporting. It is almost guaranteed that men report less than women do. And here's the other important thing that needs to be considered here, because a lot of times when you're talking about adults and their relationships, it's just icky, and it's like, whose business is it really to step in and tell them where they should be happy or where they shouldn't be? But like where it matters is, one of the reasons why people are in relationships is to have children. So if there are children in the mix and they're seeing this violence and they're seeing this, bad situation that they're living in, what you want is to be able to not perpetuate that going forward. So when you have the Justice Department that typically just gives the child to women, that a lot of skeezy lawyers tell their clients that it would behoove them and make their cases stronger if they were to, kind of say they were abused a little bit, or to, kind of allude to it. And what you end up with is there is a criminal mindset, like there is a psychology that when you, here's the thing that most people don't understand. The legal system is violence. Everything in society is violence. So when you tell this police officer, he hurt me, so you go over there and hurt him. And that is exactly what is being said. Now, like, you're not necessarily having the cop go over and beat him with a nightstick, though that could very well happen if he resists, or he could even be shot if he resists. What you're trying to do is take his freedom away and hurt him. Like the legal system is violence, right? Like, we are punishing you, and this is going to, like, even if it's just they go over and take his money, like let's say it's a lawsuit, and all you do is take the person's money that you're accusing. Well, if he doesn't pay, he's going to go to jail. Then if he doesn't want to come to jail, he could get beat or shot by the cops or whatever. So there is violence by telling the police officer, hey, go do that and commit violence against my ex because he did it to me. And there is justification if it's real. But if it's not real and you're committing violence, then there is a psychology that you are more inclined to commit one-on-one violence. And typically, if you're a violent person and have those issues, you are likely to commit violence towards a child. Women who fake abuse allegations are infinitely more likely to abuse their children than men. Or than women who don't do that. But generally speaking, and I'm kind of jumped the gun here, women are more likely to beat their children than men are. Yes, when men do it, it's typically more extreme. It's the idea that women are more likely to attempt suicide, but when men attempt suicide, they're way more likely to succeed and actually achieve it. Women are way more likely to attempt violence, but men are way more extreme in their attempts. So I think that comes down to men growing up in a culture of violence. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. Violence is innate in nature. It is innate in the human condition, in psychology, in all of our physiology. Violence has always existed, it always will, it's part of society and culture, and there's good places for it and there's bad places for it. And no, one of the good places isn't in a relationship with a partner, unless you're, obviously defending yourself from someone, putting violent attacks towards you. But my point is that women typically are less responsible for violence. They're not, people understand that men and the quote unquote toxic masculinity out there, men are going to be more violent. There's a more propensity for violence. So historically, we have tried to curb that and kind of redirect that into healthy activities, whether that be sports, whether that be martial arts, whether that be just like if you look at predominantly male activities over time, it was a way to redirect these violent urges that men have. Women, there's not really a ton of things for that. So there's no responsibility. So when women want to act out and want to act violently, they're not really used to repercussions. So anytime that you think you're going to get away with something, there is a much higher chance that you will attempt it. Like, give you an example. One of the things I learned when I was doing interrogations and going through statistics and a lot of the FBI interrogation resources is that generally speaking of accusations made for any criminal activity, you've got about a 20% chance that the person making the accusation is lying. So if you have someone who is a store owner and they're saying that they were robbed, there's a 20% chance that they're lying that they were robbed so that they can get some sort of insurance, and they're probably running a scam on you. If you have a woman who's accusing rape, 20% chance. Like either she's looking for attention, and that could be from other types and forms of abuse, or it could be that her ex cheated on her, and she's looking for some form of retaliation, and it's not illegal to cheat, but it's illegal to rape. So I'm going to say he raped, because he raped my feelings when he cheated on me. Or it could be a power play. I give you a really good example. When I was in high school, and I'm not going to use names here, there was a guy a grade up from me who was Mr. Football. He got a scholarship to one of the high universities as a lineman. Guy was as big as me, 6'3", but a lot stronger. One of the nicest guys I've ever met, devout Christian, and he was engaged to a girl that was a year older than him, and they were waiting until marriage. He was a big kid at heart. Like he was a guy. Like I went to boarding school, and he had his entire room decked out as like Hot Wheels. Like he had like the little race cars everywhere. And anyways, he went out drinking right before graduation, and one of the girls in his graduating class, who was like 5 foot nothing, like literally 5 foot, he's 6'3", 6'4", probably weighed 250 pounds, jacked, and here's this little 6'4" person. He got incapacitated drunk, and she raped him. She was able to get him erect while he was unconscious and insert his penis into her, and he woke up halfway through the experience and pushed him off. She had an STD that does not go away that she gave to him. He tried to file charges, and the DA essentially told him there is not a jury on earth that will convict her because all they need to do is stand you up next to her. His fiance broke up with him because he had an STD that would go to him or go to her if they ever did consummate. And then on top of that, you have the idea that even his fiance didn't believe him or trust him, that he must have wanted it. Guys want it, so she's a fairly attractive person, he must have been consenting. I don't know, it's just like that was a very personal thing that happened, and the fact that nothing was done, there was absolutely no justice served. I also think that when you talk about rape cases and the violence between men and women, I think what you end up with is, I feel like I try not to get very political on this channel. I have political thoughts and feelings and opinions, but my general thought process is that it's way more important to help people get their own home in order. Like, if you can find someone that is going to help you have a productive life and family, you are going to have much greater effects from that than if you vote for the right person, or if you support the right company or politics or blah. I think that happiness really does start from the home, because if you can take care of yourself and you can take care of your own family, you can start taking care of your neighborhood. If you can take care of your neighborhood, it just kind of expands from there. And if you can take care of your own hometown and your own people around you, that's way more influential to those people than who's in office or anything like that. But I also just, I don't know, like, I've been around a lot of situations where men really do get shafted. And, the politics of that is absolutely atrocious. So, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I remember working a case investigatively because there was a serial rapist who was breaking in to girls' rooms on the military base I was at. Ended up finding the guy and arresting him, thank God. But I also remember there was a homosexual version of that at a different base many years later, who was attacking men in their sleep. And that didn't quite get the same amount of attention, and there wasn't as much push to, like, protect these men, because there was the assumption that the men should be strong enough to fight him off, which is ridiculous, because if you're asleep, most people don't sleep with a lot of clothes on. I don't know, like, if somebody is starting with your pants down behind you naked with a heart on, like, it is what it is. But statistically speaking, where do most rapes occur? They occur in colleges, and they occur in Hollywood. Like the number of rapes and people who've been abused in Hollywood is ridiculous. And these are both very liberal institutions. And I really do believe that what is desirable from these things is it's almost like they want these internalizations of victimhood. Either they want women, because one of the biggest things that's pushed to get an even playing field for women is that you need to go to university, you need to go to college, you need to get a degree so you can have your own independence and your own job. And yet, these women are statistically, like going to college is like your highest chance of rape ever. And yet, the reasons why that is why are, what's being taught at college? Well, you need to experiment. You need to find out who you are, right? You need to have a lot of sex. You need to go to a lot of parties. There's drinking. And, the thing about people when they're just kind of coming into their own sexuality, which most people are, they're teenagers in early 20s, they don't really know how to express themselves. Like, most men and women, for that matter, don't really know how to get what they want with their words. Most people don't even know what they want, much less be able to express it. Like, most people don't even know it themselves. So, everyone's horny and full of hormones at that age. And, if a woman is doing things that are perceived as consent, maybe people keep going. Maybe people, keep going with that and do things that are regrettable. Like, I'm not trying to speak from any personal experience, but I've been in situations where I remember I was in the military, and one of the things that they do is an in-briefing anytime you go to a new duty station, because different states have different laws. And one of the states, I don't remember which one for the life of me, but I remember one of the states when you're doing this in-briefing was talking about what constituted rape in that state. And one of the things is if you ask a girl for sex and they say no, and you ask again and they say yes, that's not really consent, because it's it's not really consent because like it's coerced or they're afraid of repercussions, which doesn't make any sense to me. One of the other ones that I heard that I thought was awful was if there was foreplay ahead of time before she was asked, that because it would create such horniness in the female that she was unaccountable for her actions, that you've basically manipulated her by turning her on with foreplay, like making out or fondling, which she's allowed to consent to that, but once you consent to fondling, like the repercussions of the fondling are so extreme that women can't be in their mind after the fact. So, if you get a girl horny first and then ask her to fuck you and she says yes, you better not, because, legally speaking, she's not going to be held responsible. I mean, these things are ridiculous. However, like, I know for a fact that, like, they happen. Like, the reason why the government gives these courses to military is because somebody got in trouble. Like, they don't want to lose their asset, these soldiers. And it's not that, like, the government is trying to sweep it under the rug or not have these people be prosecuted. However, they want to make sure that people are aware of what the laws are in that given state. So, some of these things really do become awful. And I think, when you're telling people to experiment at such a young age, go out and see as much as you can. Like, I think, one, it creates this idea of, I got to go out there and I got to experiment and I got to try all these different things. And if I can't, and if I'm unable to experiment, then I'm a failure. But at the same time, you don't really have the ability, like I said, to communicate things. So if you're out on a date with a girl and you're making out and, you start, because, like, here's the thing, like, people always think about this in terms of, like, well, if you get a girl really drunk or what, first things first, if you have two people that are both drunk, who's raping who, right? Like, if you're both drunk and you're both, like, I can understand it if you're sober and you're, like, feeding a girl, like, Mickeys or drugs or something and then whatever, but, like, if you're both drunk, and, like, I've talked to police about that question because it's just, like, fundamentally a weird question to me. And what the police officer said is that whoever files first, so, like, I don't know, like, there's a part of me that's whatever, that was like, I'm not going to say that. But, like, whoever files first. So men or like, even if a man, like, didn't really consent and was taken advantage of because he was drunk and whatever, it's like, what past is past, whatever. Like, he's never going to file rape on that girl. Ever. If a girl, if he's at a bar and he's drunk and a girl jumps on him and he wasn't really into it, but he, like, went ahead with it, that guy's never going to file rape on that girl. And, like, what's even worse is you got a drunk guy in a bar and a girl jumps on him. And the girl files rape, even though he wasn't the one pursuing, he could, because she filed first. So, I feel like at the very heart of this is, don't be in those situations. Like, don't be in a situation with a girl who will shit in your bed. Like, don't be in a situation where you're drunk in a party. Don't be in a situation, like, there is at some point needs to be responsibility for you and your own actions, because, I'll give you a really good example, and it might not seem like a good example, but it's actually a really good example. I'm allergic to bee stings. And when I was a kid, I got them a little bit when I was younger, but as I got older, the actual allergic reactions got worse. So the last time I got stung by a bee, and I'm 37 right now, is when I was 13 years old. So for 24 years, well more than half of my life, I have not been stung by a bee, hornet, or wasp. And it's really simple. I take that shit seriously. I do not put myself in a situation where it could be. If I see that there's a lot of bugs over there, I'm just not going to go over there. I remember being in the military and people being like, you need to be over there. I'm like, no, I don't. This is risking my life here. Even with an EpiPen, like, there's no guarantees that everything's going to work. I am not going to take that risk. It is a priority to me in the back of my head because I know that there is going to be a severely adverse reaction if I get stung, so I'm making it a priority. Like again, like I can't guarantee that I will never be stung in my life. But what I can do is take precautions. And like most people get stung every few years. I think the statistic is like most people get stung like 2 or 3 times a year on average. So just something to think about. Like a lot of things are up to you and what you have as a priority in your life. So think about what it is that you want. Think about what it is to get there and stop doing the things that are going to be adverse to reaching those goals. I think it's really as simple as that. So while I completely understand the men's rights movement and I am a big supporter of that, I think that ultimately when you're talking about gender and gender equality, you do have to have a melding in the middle. 100%. Like you need to be able to have real communication and understanding between the sexes, but at the same time, if women do not understand the positions that they put men into and what the legal ramifications of marriage and the legal system are to men, then they're not doing a very good job of being a partner and having those conversations to make their male partners feel comfortable, feel confident, and actually have a relationship. And especially if you're not even willing to understand the points of view and you're like, well, you're a bigot. And let me tell you, if you're a man and you're having that conversation with a woman and she's shutting you down, run. Absolutely 100% run.